Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there.
Yeah, Indiana, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Indiana's undefeated at home in this postseason run. So like that's one of their big angles is they're this super young, energetic, fast playing in transition type of team. And that can be a buzzsaw when you go on the road. Yeah. And but like, by the way, we saw Indiana beat Boston in the in-season tournament. Now, one of the couple things there, that was before Haliburton hurt his hamstring. And what you saw for the handful of games in this series, where when you saw Haliburton's upside, that was kind of what he was like every night before his hamstring injury. Like he's Steve Nash 2.0. He's super fast. He could shoot. He could get into the paint and generate all these high quality shots. So like the way I look at it, it's like Indiana's a team full of specialists. It's like two great play initiators in TJ McConnell and Tyrese Haliburton, and then a bunch of play finishers, guys like Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam, all these guys, right? Pascal Siakam can play on an island a little bit, but like they're just this specialist team. Whereas Boston is a team that's got like a bunch of stars, basically, or fringe stars that are like learning how to play together.
Right.
And so the case for Indiana is like Indiana is optimized, Boston's not. Indiana lives in transition. Maybe they just make the whole series a track meet. Maybe they make a bunch of shots. Maybe they win. But Boston is like so much better defensively, and they do have more talent overall offensively as well. Like they're just better on both ends of the floor. So it's hard to find a pathway to victory. I just think with Indiana's home court advantage, they'll probably push the series to 5 or 6, but I have a really hard time believing Indiana gets a win in this one.
So Dallas beats OKC in probably one of the top 2 or 3 games of the year in the NBA. It was just an insane matchup with tremendous offensive players. And I kind of feel like this is, when it was over, I'm like, yeah, this is the way it should have ended, is that the young team took a baby step. And whereas Minnesota has some veterans, some Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, OKC really doesn't. They're all kind of, it's kind of kids. They could have used probably a 33-year-old guy in big moments, they could depend on. And it's sort of, this is what they were. So I think Oklahoma City flies home and thinks this was a great season. I think Dallas needed to win it. I've said this before. I know Luka's great. I've been watching the NBA since '72. He's one of the more gifted, unstoppable offensive players, and it's surprising how many great offensive players are unorthodox. They're different. They're weird. Mm-hmm. I grew up with George Gervin. Finger rolls from 12 feet. Moses Malone. A lot of these prodigious scores. The sky hook. It ain't jumpers. Alex English led the '80s in scoring and couldn't jump. Right? Like some guys are just. They're just scorers. Luka's so different. He always looks heavy, and it's like Dirk Nowitzki fall away, but not as pretty. I will give him credit, though, to bring in, at times, a ball-centric guy with a unique personality, Kyrie, and to sort of step back on ball usage, play better defense. Like, he's not stubborn. Like, Melo, to me, always felt stubborn. Like, Luka's got some self-awareness. That's my takeaway, is that if I was a Maverick fan, I'm like, our guy kind of looked at himself and went, I got to be a better defender. I'm never going to look great, but I'm going to put the effort in, and I'm going to get the ball out of my hands. And it's like, that's something. The self-awareness is something. That's what I see.
First of all, that bit about the scores being weird is so interesting, and I've never thought about that before, because as you go back, a lot of them are like that. Like Jokic is this weird wide-bodied refrigerator of a player that just shoots all these like kind of funky shots. Like James Harden is a lefty that is like 2-dimensional and either just will drive left or take a step back jumper going right. That's like the only 2 things he does, but no one could guard him for like a 4-year period. Like he was completely unstoppable. There's so many of these like kind of weird players out there. I wonder if that has to do with just the unorthodox nature of guarding those players versus the traditional matchups that players see elsewhere around the league. But like one of the things that I think Kyrie, I think is one of those players that is, when he is slotted in the right role, impacts winning like a top 15 player in the league. But when he's outside of that right role, you start to kind of see some of his warts. And, we saw that in Boston when it's like, okay, he can't be the number one. Like he just clearly is incapable of doing that. even in Brooklyn, you know, by the way, that Brooklyn team was pretty good. I think that was a turned ankle and a strained hamstring away from probably winning the title in 2021. But again, he wasn't playing alongside a do everything forward. That's what's unique about the Luka and LeBron experience, because I don't think it's a coincidence Kyrie is playing this incredible defense that he's playing this season. This is his best defensive season since 2016, when he hit the game winner in Game 7 of the NBA Finals and guarded Steph the majority of that series. The reason why is on that team, because LeBron could take 60% of the offensive possessions and just eat up all that usage. Kyrie was an excellent off-ball player. He could spot up and space the floor, but then it was like, here's a third of the game. Go cook. But this rest of the time, I got you. Then that allowed him to kind of handle all of his like energy distribution in all of these useful ways. And like Kyrie's had some kind of iffy statistical games in this playoff run where I thought he was awesome. He had a game earlier this series where he took like 8 shots, but he had like 11 assists and was unbelievable defensively. Like Kyrie, I think when he plays alongside a Swiss Army knife forward that can really run an offense for the majority of a game, he can focus his energy into his elite traits, and he's got some real elite traits. And then I think, and this is the one last thing I want to say about Dallas, and it's a really interesting factor coming into the Minnesota series. Denver can't protect the rim. It is their biggest weakness.
Yeah.
And that ended up being an issue. You see Naz Reid and Karl Towns slashing to the rim, Anthony Edwards slashing to the rim. Look at what the Lakers did to them. They eviscerated their front line defensively. Minnesota is going into Dallas. Dallas is an excellent rim protection team. Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford have transformed that defense into you talk about redwoods. Those dudes underneath the basket can really protect the rim. And I think
that was also a trade deadline move. Like, I mean, it's
aggression.
It's amazing what you can do with the trade deadline. It was one of the great trade deadline that didn't get a ton of press. It didn't get a lot of attention.
To your point, because you talked about how you said Dallas, excuse me. You said Dallas needed that series. You're right. It's an absolute catastrophe if they lose that series, like a complete and total catastrophe, because they gave up first round draft compensation for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. So like now, looking back at it, it looks genius. But there was a lot of stakes for Dallas in that series. For the record, I thought Dallas deserved to win. I thought they were the better team.
Yeah.
But again, like they have some real rim protection, and that's going to be an interesting angle on the Minnesota series, because Minnesota likes to attack the rim. They're a slashing, dribble penetration, attack the rim type of offense, and Dallas is kind of built to withstand that. So that'll be a really, really interesting element in the next round.